Rowdy.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's happening, Solomon? All right.
Not much. Had to change out of my T-shirt and put on my debate clothing. So.
Special Wednesday Debate Day edition of Reality Check. It is actually Word on Politics this Wednesday morning here on WURD. It is Progressive Black Talk Media. We're live on 96.1 FM, 900 AM on Philadelphia radio, of course, but throughout the nation, throughout the world. Many of you listening in at wordradio.com, wordradio.com for our national live stream, and watching us on Word TV at either Facebook or YouTube, and you're listening to us on your Word app. We begin. We are going to start momentarily our special debate here of the Democratic candidates who are running for what is now an open U.S. Senate seat in Pennsylvania this 2022 election year. Hashtag Word on Politics. For more there, for more conversation, we're going to go ahead and get it started, and we appreciate the time of these three candidates. We're going to introduce them right now in a moment. Also, but however, before we do that, I'd like to introduce my colleagues, our moderators for this event, the esteemed, the illustrious Ms. Joanne Bell, who is
Good morning.
The head founder of the Black Women's Leadership Council, also host of Black Women's Leadership Council at the Source here on WURD, longtime veteran political strategist as well in Pennsylvania, and Solomon Jones. You know Solomon Jones. You just heard Solomon Jones in Wake Up with Word. He's our morning flagship drive time host here on WURD, longtime activist and in Philadelphia. He's joining us here, and really appreciate him transitioning from 3 hours of Wake Up with Word to now an hour of this debate. And I am Charles Ellison. I am normally your host, executive producer, creator of Reality Check here on WURD, and also anchor for City Council Live. And so here we are going into this debate. Let's introduce real quick before we get into our debate session, introduce the candidates, and we'll go in alphabetical order. We have Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, who is running for that U.S. Senate seat, or the Democratic nod for that U.S. Senate seat. Also, Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who represents parts of Philadelphia, the 181st Legislative District, also running for that open U.S. Senate seat, or the Democratic nod to that. And from the western side of the state, it is Congressman Connor Lamb, representing the 17th Congressional District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, going to the House in Washington, D.C., representing the state. And he is also running for this open U.S. Senate seat. It's a big year. It's a major battleground state, Pennsylvania, in 2022. So I'm told to start this off, am I correct? We're going to, actually, we're not going to do a coin toss, but the debate rules, I'm going to go over the debate rules real quick, but to start, we're going to be having the candidates pick a number, and whoever comes to the closest number that we have picked, then that'll be like the first person to answer the question that we're going to throw out first. Each of the candidates are given 90 seconds for responses. 90 seconds for responses. Please keep to that. We will make you hold to that. So you have to be sort of considerate of your fellow candidates and your fellow panelists on this roundtable, since we have a very short period of time and there are a lot of questions to go through. So just be very mindful of that. And then we're going to go around the table. We'll start with me, and then we'll go on to Joanne and Solomon and so on and so forth, asking questions, and then we'll go around the table to the various candidates. So we're going to go ahead. Solomon, do you want to go ahead and do the number picking? You want to go ahead and have the candidates select a number between 1 to 10?
Sure. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, please pick a number between 1 and 10.
6.
Okay. Representative Kenyatta, please pick a number between 1 and 10.
Good morning. 8.
Okay. And Congressman Lamb, please pick a number between 1 and 10.
5.
Okay.
And what is that lucky number, Solomon?
The lucky number is 4.
4. Okay. All right. So it looks like who was closest to it? That was
sounds like Congressman Lamb. I think he said 5.
Yes, he did. All right.
Okay.
Excellent. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question, and I'll go off to my colleagues who have questions as well. So we'll start off with Congressman Lamb. This is designed for a simple yes or no, Congressman, and we'll start with you and then go to the other two candidates. In light of the recent revelation from Politico that the Supreme Court's majority is preparing to overturn the landmark Roe versus Wade decision, which would overturn reproductive and abortion rights, if you were in the Senate and had an opportunity to check the court and vote in favor of reinstituting that law, would you do so? Yes or no?
Yes, I did that in the House already. Yes.
All right. All right. Let's go to Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. Yes or no?
Emphatically, yes.
All right. And State Representative Kenyatta.
Yes, and I've made it clear I think we need to expand the court because Mitch McConnell packed it with radical conservatives that did this in the first place.
All right, just yes or no. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Joanne, you're next.
So this question is to Congressman Lamb. You served on the House Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure. Pennsylvania will receive $17.8 billion out of the 110 in infrastructure investment. And so the Jobs Act to improve roads, bridges, public transportation, drinking water, and more. Question, what did you do and what will you do to ensure that African Americans are included in these public works projects, i.e. by contracts, toll road investors, and employment opportunities?
Thank you for that question, because unfortunately, one of the least appreciated aspects of the bill is one of the most important for what you're talking about. In the infrastructure bill, we gave permanent authority, which in Washington means a lot because it means a bigger budget and more power. We gave permanent authority to a called the Minority Business Development Agency. Did I freeze on you guys? I apologize if I did.
Yes.
Just said
Yeah, there's a little bit of
internet
freezing
connection
going
was
on.
No good.
Right. We'll just
Yeah, sorry about that. So anyway, we gave permanent to the Minority Business Development Agency, and their entire job is to go out and help Black and Latino-owned businesses get access to federal contracts. That is really an old boys network, and not only do you need to know people, you have to have certain capital levels in your business to be able to fund. They'll only give you a contract for a bridge, for example, if they know you have enough cash to actually get it done in a reasonable amount of time. And so I've already invited the head of that agency over to my office to talk about what we can do together to make Pennsylvania one of the first states where they really hit the ground running hard. They have an office here in Philadelphia already, actually, but their job in the past has been basically to wait for people to walk through the door and ask them for help. I want to turn it into an agency where they are going out on the ground, pushing these ideas and contacts and resources to the people that need them the most. So I would start by bringing the MBDA head to both Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and meeting with Black-owned businesses that are competing for these contracts, whether in construction or sanitation or even something like scaffolding. I met someone recently who runs a scaffolding company, so that this new agency head can really learn from these people what exact help they need and how we can provide it the most quickly and efficiently. Because we have 10 years to do this infrastructure work. Mm-hmm. The critical decisions like this will be made in the first couple in terms of who's going to benefit. And I want to
Congressman, I got to cut you off because I have to go to Solomon Jones. He'll have the next question. Go ahead, Solomon. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Congressman. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, when protests erupted after Ahmaud Arbery was shot dead by vigilantes who confronted him with a shotgun in Georgia, how did that change your view of the 2013 incident in which you were said to have confronted a black jogger with a shotgun?
Sure. I want to understand, everyone to understand that's not anything like what that was. That morning in 2013, I was outside in the yard playing with my son. It was very cold out and there was snow on the ground. And we heard a large burst of gunfire coming from an area. And, I did what I felt was necessary. I got my son to safety. I called 911 and I saw one individual running from the source of the gunfire. And that's the decision I made to act in a split second for the protection of my community. I want folks to understand that Braddock as mayor and chief law enforcement officer, Braddock's a community that's 75% Black, that had a significant gun violence problem. And, you know, I came to Braddock originally to teach GED classes and be a program director, and only ran for mayor because 2 of my students were gunned down. So gun violence is very personal to me. In fact, we were very successful confronting gun violence in Braddock as a result of that. I'm proud of my record in that regard. We went 5.5 years without a killing at all, gun violence or otherwise. It had never been accomplished before or since. And to me, fighting crime and doing it with a community policing model was an accomplishment I'm very proud of. I want to emphasize, I never pointed the gun at the individual. I also want to acknowledge that what it sounds like just on the surface could be concerned. And you absolutely have to acknowledge the harm in the Black community from police profiling, absolutely.
All right, also want to let the candidates know at 90 seconds, we will be muting you. So we have to keep to that 90-second rule in your responses. Next question will be from me to State Representative Kenyatta. So your legislative district, Representative, is one of the poorest and most economically distressed, if not the most, in the entire state. Yet you've only been a state representative for a very short period of time. What have you done for your district specifically? What resources have you provided for it?
No, thank you for that, Charles. And that's a part of why perspectives like mine are so important in the U.S. Senate. You know, the U.S. Senate has been, you know, a white boys club for a wealthy white boys club, by the way, for a long time. We haven't had somebody who's come from a district like mine in the place where we can rush critical resources to communities like mine. I grew up here. My dad was a social worker. My mom was a home health aide. They separated when I was pretty young. That meant I got my first job at the age of 12, washing dishes at 4th and Spring Garden at what used to be Patterson's Palace, a little vegan soul food restaurant. Buried both of my parents by the time I was 27 because they didn't have the type of health care everybody deserves. And I've been a champion on this issue. I've introduced legislation with Senator Hughes to create an intergenerational poverty commission, but it has 2 aspects of it. The first is right now, before we vote on a bill, we get what's called a fiscal note to talk about the fiscal impact. Our legislation would also have a note attached to it that would talk about how this addresses poverty in communities like mine.
But if I were to ask you real quick, those representatives, if I were to ask for a number, if I wanted to get a specific amount as to how much you brought to your district, like a price tag, like how many millions or billions of dollars have you been able to direct to your district?
Close to 15 million. Back to my district to fund a variety of different programs. And that's not also the money that we've been able to get from our leader's office that we can put toward different projects like NOMA.
Okay, so yeah, we got that 90-second rule going on. So Joanne, you have the next question.
Yes, this one goes to Representative Kenyatta. Philadelphia has a 28% poverty level borne by years of disinvestment in the African-American community. In recent years, we saw the Commonwealth establish the Gaming Control Act, which granted some 14 licenses to well-heeled bidders. None were African-Americans. Over 100 medical marijuana licensed dispensaries, fewer than 2 are African-Americans. And now PennDOT has issued an RFQ, which resulted in granting 9 companies who will oversee bridges, roads, and construction projects. None are African Americans. Representative Kenyatta, who's looking out for the African American community in Harrisburg when these licenses and contracts were being awarded?
Oh, sorry, I was muted there. And so let me take them one at a time. You know, first of all, as the only African American in this race and who would be the first African American to represent Pennsylvania in the U.S. Senate, I don't think people have any doubt on who I'm going to be fighting for and standing up for, because this is personal to me and to the people that I love best. As it relates to the gaming contracts, those were given out before I was in the legislature. When you talk about medical marijuana and the fact that you're right, 0 of those licenses are now held by African Americans. And I've been absolutely outspoken on this. People can go and look at things I've said about this on the floor. When we were considering legislation around legalizing marijuana, I highlighted the need to make sure that that is done, as well as dealing with the historical harms that cannabis prohibition has inflicted on Black and brown communities. And I have been an outspoken voice on talking about parity in terms of contracting out to Black and brown business owners. I used to work at the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, where I led diversity and inclusion initiatives and brought business owners together and focused in on Black, brown, women-owned businesses. And so this is something I've been committed to for a long time.
All right, thanks so much, Joanne. Solomon, go ahead, next question.
All right, so Congressman Lamb, a political action committee that supported you ran an ad that factcheck.org called false. The ad said that Lieutenant Governor Fetterman is a self-described Democratic socialist. Elizabeth Warren called the ad wrong and disgusting and said you need to disavow that ad today. Will you disavow that ad?
No, I won't. Thank you for the question, but it's not my ad to disavow, and that has been abundantly clear, as you noted in your question. It's actually legally prohibited for me to tell a group like that what they can or cannot put on the air.
But I'm not. Wait a minute. Let me just say this. I'm not asking you to tell them what to do. I'm asking you to say whether or not that is true. Will you say that is not true, as factcheck.org said, or is it true?
Well, if you're asking about the specific claim of whether Lieutenant Governor described himself as a socialist, I will take him at his word that he did not. And I believe that part of the ad was changed within a day or two of when it went up. So most of the time it was on the air. It did not include that specific claim. I think the reason that this issue is important, I'll say these are not the words that I use. When I talk about it, I talk about policy differences between us and whether we fit the profile of this state. John Fetterman's favoritism of Medicare for all, for example, is a $30 trillion difference between the two of us on healthcare. It won't be a popular or successful policy at the statewide level in Pennsylvania. Actually, it hasn't been successful at statewide level in any state. That's why we don't have it in America. So that's where I come from, is a difference in policy, not personality. But again, it wasn't my ad. So I can control what I can control, which is the way I try to talk about this with respect from a policy point of view.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Okay, I've got the next question. That will be to Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. Lieutenant Governor, please name 3 issues that you're currently focused on that are specific to the Black community and that are not dealing with criminal justice or cannabis. Go. Lieutenant Governor, we have you on mute. So we'll restart the clock since he was on mute. Can we take him off mute, or is he on mute? You're on mute, Lieutenant Governor. There we go. Yep. Let's restart the clock for Lieutenant Governor since we had him on mute.
Sure. Well, the number one issue I would have would be the minimum wage that I'm focused on. Currently, our minimum wage is a disgrace, both here in Pennsylvania, but nationally it's $7.25 an hour. And we know, though, the burden of low wages falls disproportionately and unfairly on Black and brown residents in urban communities. They were the frontline heroes that helped us get through the pandemic, yet they were not appropriately taken care of. They were not appropriately compensated. So from my perspective, it's an economic justice issue. And that's why I, as mayor, fought so strongly as well for those just kind of core basic economic justice issues. What can you do on $7.25 an hour? I mean, nothing. So I think it's critical. Second one that is enhancing union membership as well too. The unions have been typically, kind of older, whiter, and exclusionary, and I want to make sure that all the quality journeyman training programs and other type of avenues that can lead to a life in middle and upper middle class living by being a contractor or an electrician or a pipe fitter, whatever, are increasingly open, and recruitment for those kind of candidates. And finally, the Black infant mortality rate in Pennsylvania in this country is a disgrace. It is twice as high as the white.
Lieutenant Governor, you are put on mute, so we got to go to Joanne. Joanne, you've got the next set of questions, or the next question for any of the candidates. Go ahead.
This question is for Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. Where do you stand on the statehood for the District of Columbia, D.C., and Puerto Rico? And also, should refugees fleeing Haiti be given the same asylum rights in the U.S. as those given to the Ukrainians? I think he's on mute.
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor, you got to make sure you take your mute button off.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was taking myself off or you, sir.
No, you go ahead and do it. Go ahead.
Okay. I support without qualification statehood for Washington, D.C. Taxation without representation is a travesty, and that needs to change. I absolutely support statehood for Puerto Rico, and there should be no preferential treatment to any group. It should be equal before the law, or also based on actual refugees and those that are fleeing exceptionally dangerous situations. Absolutely. Haitians deserve every opportunity and every consideration, and I was absolutely appalled and heartbroken at some of those images that emerged from the southern border a few months ago as well too. It's like, doesn't matter where you're from, Ukraine or Haiti, you deserve an equal opportunity to come to our country. And I've been a long-term spoken advocate for immigration, particularly since my wife, as a former dreamer in her experience, has shown me just how critical it is that we develop a compassionate and realistic immigration solution that takes care of a balance between our borders and the great American tradition of immigration.
All right, Solomon, go ahead.
All right, so Representative Kenyatta, the Anti-Defamation League says Pennsylvania ranks #1 in the nation for hate groups. As a candidate representing multiple identities that are targeted by these groups, what's your strategy for winning statewide in a place where racism and hate have kept so many statewide candidates of color from actually winning?
Well, one of the bigger problems is that we don't have a lot of statewide candidates of color who run. But let me be clear about this. My job as a Black candidate is not to end all racism in Pennsylvania. My job is to get the most votes. And the way that we get the most votes is by having robust turnout in Philadelphia and southeastern Pennsylvania, by making sure that Black voters, young voters, women, in all of our suburban counties, which have been the real backbone and base of the Democratic Party, that they come out in historic numbers. And that we have a messenger that can go anywhere and everywhere and speak with a level of urgency and authenticity about what's broken. I don't think the racists should get to pick our nominee. And so we shouldn't say we can't elect an African American because there's gonna be a racist who's upset about it. They're upset about my very existence, but yet still I rise and I get up every day and do everything I can to try to change outcomes for people who come from neighborhoods like mine. I got involved as an activist because things weren't right or fair. And that's what I'm gonna try to fix as a senator as well.
All right, I'll have the next question, and that goes to Congressman Lamb. Congressman, just wondering if you're thinking about the affordable housing crisis. Philly, like most places in America, is also faced with a housing crisis. People are running out of literally affordable places to live. And so what should be done in your mind? What legislation would you promote, advance, or even sponsor as a U.S. Senator to fix the affordable housing crisis?
Thank you. My goal here, first and foremost, is going to be to help Black families in Philadelphia build generational wealth by owning their own homes and being able to sell them or pass them on to their kids. That's a goal that a lot of us in America share, but has been denied to the Black community historically through redlining and these problems with titles that thankfully your Register of Wills here is taking on very aggressively. The way that we do that is, it was already a problem before the pandemic, and then they basically stopped building Washington that would encourage people to build more actual affordable owner-occupied housing. We've done a decent job in the federal government over the years through this something called the low-income housing tax credit of building affordable rental housing, although even that has problems in Philadelphia because they use income numbers for what's affordable based on what happens outside the city and not the actual poverty rate of the city itself. So that has to be reformed. But we need a new tax credit that will encourage these developers to stop building $1 million condos for wealthy people and start building middle-class family homes of the kind that have helped people advance in this country for a long time. There's a bill called the Neighborhood Housing Tax Credit that would do exactly that, and I would be a co-sponsor of that in the Senate and push it along. I just want to add that in the Build Back Better bill I voted for and we passed in the House, we also had record levels of funding for public housing, like the place where the fire happened in Fairmount here that hasn't been done in 25 years, and vouchers to help people get off the streets and into housing right away.
All right, next question will go to Joanne Bell.
This question is for Congressman Lamb, and in keeping with generational wealth in the African-American community, African-American students carry more student loan debt than their counterparts, largely because of the income disparity that exists in this country. Your platform calls for loan forgiveness, but we would like to know, how much are you willing to forgive? And will you do it by legislation? And will it be 10,000 or will it be 50,000? Please explain.
Thank you. You know, I think the number here has to be suited to what people's needs actually are. So President Biden proposed 10,000. I could support that. The fact is that about half of borrowers have 22,000 or less. Now, to your point, the average Black student loan holder has $25,000 more on average than their white counterparts. So you might think that maybe you start at least 25,000 to make sure that you're addressing that margin. The key is really at the end of the day that we pick a number that we can get the most votes for, and you've seen it's been very difficult in both the House and Senate to actually get majorities behind this thing. I think the biggest impact that we can have really is on the long-term form of the debt. So what I really think we need to do is cap everybody's monthly payments at a percentage that they can actually afford. Historically, we've done that for people in public service. Like when I was in the Marine Corps, there was a cap on how much I had to pay every month because I worked for the government. That should be extended to everybody. And I think it should be somewhere around 7% of what you bring in for a month over time. And then we can do more forgiveness at the end of that, particularly if you're engaged in anything resembling public service. But I think all these people that are out there trying to work and take care of their children deserve to have the certainty of knowing that each month, regardless of what we forgive now, each month they'll be able to afford to make ends meet.
Thank you, Congressman. Go ahead. Solomon Jones has the next question.
All right. So, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, the Black community supported the Biden-Harris ticket primarily to deal with two issues: police reform and voting rights. Neither one has been dealt with sufficiently, as legislation like the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act has died in the Senate. How would you, as a freshman senator, affect the outcome of our push for those two things?
Yeah, I think I absolutely, it's a wonderful question, and that's something that we must make a priority as well too. The problem in the Senate, and we were the first campaign to call for it, and that is the elimination of the filibuster. We are unable to get anything passed in this country because of the filibuster, because we need 60 votes in order to move anything in the Senate, but we don't even have 50 votes in the Democratic caucus to do that. I've always believed that we need to come together as Democrats and vote like Democrats and get things done for the American people, including the George Floyd Justice Act like that. The reason why we don't is senators like Joe Manchin, for example, that even recently have rejected any appeals to protect and enshrine abortion rights in legislation as recently as yesterday. You know, if I'm a freshman senator in Washington, D.C., I will always vote for those big, important, transformative bills and legislation, whether it's police reform, whether it's Build Back Better, whether it is for a minimum wage, whether it is for the PRO Act. All of these issues, we need to eliminate the filibuster. And if folks trust me with their vote in May, they'll always have my vote in Washington, D.C., on all these big issues.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And so we are at the 10:30 mark, about a couple of minutes after. Just real quick, you are now listening to a special Word on Politics election coverage broadcast. We are broadcasting the Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate, or the top Democratic candidates according to polling in the U.S. Senate race in 2022. We're broadcasting that live here on WURD. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Solomon Jones of Wake Up with Word, and Joanne Bell of the Black Women's Leadership Council. For the social media discourse, you can go to hashtag Word on Politics if you'd like to leave some comments and potential questions, and we'll be doing some analysis after. But we have a half hour to go in this special Word on Politics broadcast debate of the Democratic U.S. Senate candidates here in 2022. The next question goes to me, Representative Kenyatta. So cities like Philadelphia, as you know, are faced with this massive education crisis, and it's not critical race theory. Schools are not only underfunded, but school buildings are in disrepair, and they contain toxins. The vast majority of students are also not reading or math proficient. In fact, nationally, only 15% of Black eighth graders are reading proficient, and just 17% of Black high school seniors are the same. We have an illiteracy crisis. What legislation would you present to help us and other school systems across the country fix this problem? Go ahead, Representative Kenyatta.
You know, thank you for that question. And, you know, everything you outline is true, and it's incredibly frustrating. You know, I went to one of those schools where I know, and kids are in schools right now, where they know they're not getting the best education that should be available to them simply because of where they grow up. Pennsylvania, there's a case before the Commonwealth Court right now, is not doing its constitutional job in terms of adequately funding our schools. And I got into a debate with the Republican chair of the Appropriations Committee, which gives out all the money. And we were talking about some of these very issues. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that's not his job. It's the job of just local municipalities to do that. And I was gavelled down for sort of, you know, saying to him, how the hell does he not think this is his job as the person who is in charge of literally the money that comes from the state, where most of education funding comes at the state level. But at the federal level, we need to step up as well. I've called for quadrupling the level of funding to our Title I schools. I've also called for making sure that mental health care is centered in our buildings as well. In Phillips Law is a bill I introduced after an 11-year-old kid died by suicide in my district, and actually got President Biden and Vice President Harris to include that in their platform. So we're actually making sure those services are integrated in our school building as well. Because when we think about this gun violence crisis, this is impacting all of our kids emotionally and socially in terms of their development, even if they haven't lost somebody.
All right, 90-second rule there. Go ahead, Joanne.
So this goes to Representative Kenyatta. African Americans have the poorest health outcomes because of a lack of adequate health care and access to fresh foods, et cetera, et cetera. Recently, Sheriff Belial sponsored a pop-up clinic where free medical and dental care was provided. What will you do to get Medicare for all?
So thank you for that. And I mentioned this in an earlier question. You know, I buried both of my parents by the time I was not even 30, 27, because they didn't have the type of health care everybody deserves. And I've spent this entire campaign talking about making America's basic bargain real for folks. A good job backed up by a union, or the ability to start a small business, good school for your kids, the ability to go to the doctor if you get sick and be able to fill the prescription when you leave, and then the ability to have a dignified retirement. This COVID pandemic has made it crystal clear that our social safety net has not been as adequate as it should be. There's two things that I think we can do, and one that I have done. At the state level, we passed what's called Penny, the state exchange, which brought down healthcare costs for folks, and that was a bipartisan bill, and we finally got that done. Governor Wolf expanded Medicare when he got in. But we also need to get to Medicare for all, because there's a profit motive in healthcare that has put us at a real disadvantage in terms of actually covering everybody. And we know that right now, one of the most important things we can do, is the second piece, is lower the cost of prescription drugs by allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, and by actually taking on the intellectual property attorneys, which allow folks to hold on to those patents for so long. And that means increased prices for those drugs.
All right, next question goes to Solomon Jones.
All right, so Congressman Lamb, you identify, I believe, as a moderate Democrat, but so does Senator Joe Manchin. In fact, Manchin endorsed you prior to the 2020 midterms, calling you a good friend. He, of course, has scuttled much of the president's agenda. Now that Manchin has done that, what would you describe that makes you different from your fellow moderate Democrat in Senator Manchin?
Sure. And usually that word moderate is one that the media uses about us more than we use about ourselves. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Pennsylvania Democrat, and I consider it my job as a legislator to reach both to the right, the center, and the left to get votes and develop relationships to get things done. So the real contrast between me and Senator Manchin, if that's what you're asking about, is how we have voted. You mentioned he has blocked many key items in President Biden's agenda. I, on the other hand, have voted for every single one of them. So whether it was the low drug prices, the continuation of the child tax credit, I voted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He was against it. I also voted for more stable internet connections, which I'm clearly needing.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
That was a good vote.
Yeah. I am in favor of eliminating the filibuster, particularly to pass the Voting Rights Act, but really just overall, he obviously is against that too. So we have a very, very clear difference in what we've been voting for. Many people have taken a look at this online, so you don't have to take my word for it. You can just look it up yourself. But there's sometimes a suggestion as well in this primary that you just shouldn't work with people like that. And I disagree with that. Again, to bring back results, to bring back votes, to bring back dollars to our district. And I've worked with the Progressive Caucus and people in the Republican Party to do that on behalf of the people I represent.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. I'm getting the next, and definitely it looks like you got some connection issues on your end. We'll just soldier through it. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, Pennsylvania is a major oil and gas and fracking state. However, it is also one of the top states with the most potential to not only transition fairly quickly to a full clean energy infrastructure and economy, but to benefit the most economically in terms of jobs and growth in a way that would even surpass what is really a fledgling natural gas industry. Would you support a full transition to clean energy for a state like Pennsylvania?
Yeah, absolutely. We acknowledge and have always acknowledged the imperative of climate change, and it's important that we make the kind of critical investments as a state and as a nation to move forward and allow us to, in a couple decades, where we are a carbon neutral state and a carbon neutral society, without a doubt. In the meantime, where fracking does continue and exist.
So are you reversing your previous statements, Lieutenant Governor, about Pennsylvania developing more natural gas because we have high gas prices?
No, I'm not. I'm simply suggesting that, during the here and now, where we have record high prices, energy prices, we have the war in Ukraine that has artificially skewed energy markets, that we need to maintain our energy security as well, too. As mayor of my community, I developed a pioneering program to make sure people didn't have their heat shut off because folks would constantly have trouble just even paying for heat. We have to be mindful of how expensive energy costs are for the middle class, and we just can't afford to not be producing the necessary natural gas and energy that Pennsylvania is famous for, but we can also transition at the same time. It's a walk and chew gum kind of proposition as I see it, and it's something that we need to move forward with an equal commitment to both, maintaining our energy security while also transitioning in a direction that we will become a carbon neutral society, and those jobs will be filled by union members, hopefully more and more with membership from Black and brown communities that are making and earning a quality middle class existence, because I believe that is the next employment revolution, is of course the greening of our economy and our energy sector.
All right, Joanne, thank you. Lieutenant Governor Joanne, you have the next question.
This question is for Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. You're said to have a reputation as a lone wolf, an independent, and lacking bedside manner. So how will you get things done in Washington if you're not collegial? And then I have a follow-up to that, and let me give you to that one now. Some of your African-American colleagues in Braddock accused you of being, quote, white savior, and that you were making decisions about them without them. Why do you think they feel that way?
Sure. Thank you for the question. In terms of working together, I love to work together with any concerned party that wants to get something positive done. In both as my role as Lieutenant Governor and as my role as mayor here in Braddock. To be sure, I had disagreements during my time as mayor, but at the end of the day, I point to my record being overwhelmingly reelected by margins 2/3 or more in every successive election after my first victory. We were able to accomplish a lot of good during my time in Braddock. And I did bump heads with individuals, including a former borough employee that embezzled $180,000 from our town that I started that investigation, and that created some enemies as well too. So I'm always going to stick up and do the right thing, or at least what I understand to be the right thing, and work with principled people that want to get things done for Pennsylvania. I don't care if there's an R or a D after their name. I just care about doing what's right for Pennsylvania, doing what was right for my community here in Braddock, and if I'm lucky enough to be your next senator, doing what's right for the United States Senate, which I believe is coming together as a Democratic Party in these special times and meeting the moment and pushing back against the Republican insurgency that is committed to overturning the rule of law and suppressing and stealing votes, particularly among Black and brown communities as well.
All right, next question goes to Solomon Jones.
All right. Representative Kenyatta, you are the lone Philadelphia candidate in this race. And as you know, from serving in Harrisburg, there is an anti-Philadelphia bias in the state. And I don't think that's an overstatement at all. As a senator, how will you convince the rest of the state that Philadelphia's interests are statewide interests?
You know what I can do is what I've done, and that's go everywhere, talk to everybody about what I called America's basic bargain, which I just laid out: a good job, good school, quality education, a dignified retirement. And that's what I've done. I mean, I was just in Braddock this past weekend. The woman who replaced John as mayor endorsed me in this race. And I was walking around. I'm in Aliquippa, the mayor of Aliquippa, Congressman Lamb's district, endorsed me as well. And I was just in Kerwinsville. I have been in every single part of this Commonwealth. My job is to advance policy that can make a difference here in Philadelphia, but all across the Commonwealth. That's what I'm going to try to do as a senator. It's what I've tried to do as a legislator, whether it was introducing bills around lost and stolen guns, whether it's talking about the need to fully fund our schools, whether it's talking about the need to reduce property taxes for our seniors. I've done it, and I've worked with Republicans, I've worked with Democrats. I've tried to do everything I could to really move the needle. But again, I'm not going to take full ownership of getting everything in Pennsylvania, from a cultural perspective to be different. My job is to show up and to prove that when we have a government that actually reflects the working class people who very rarely get a voice, especially in places like the Senate, prove the difference that makes.
All right, next question goes to me, Congressman Lamb. What legislation would you present as a senator to combat this very existential threat that we're faced with, all of us are faced with, known as climate crisis, and also legislation to address environmental racism? Go.
Absolutely. I would love to claim to be the world's biggest expert on this, but the fact is that people who are a lot more experienced and smarter than me already put all these ideas in a bill that we had called Build Back Better. And what it did was it provided public money for power plants that emit less carbon. So things like nuclear energy, solar, wind, geothermal, helping us shift the power sector in that direction. It had record amounts of money for us to improve the ability to manufacture without spitting coal ash and all these other pollutants into the air. And perhaps most important to your question, it had a brand new source of funding for the communities that have most been impacted by environmental racism over the years. So the one I've heard about most on this campaign so far has been Chester, where they have this trash to steam machine that has been polluting and making people sick in their city for a very long time. Our bill, Build Back Better, if it became law, would provide money not only to remove something like that, but to redevelop it, fix the land, and get something new and even better in its place. That's why it's called Build Back Better. We passed that in the House with my vote and enthusiastic co-sponsorship.
All right. Yeah, it sounds like we need to build back better.
And this single seat in the Senate may allow us to pass it in the Senate.
Okay, got you, Congressman, and so you got some internet connection issues. We definitely need Build Back Better for that. Joanne Bell, you're next.
So Congress, this goes to Congressman Lamb. How far are you willing to go to get rid of the filibuster? And do you support legalizing recreational marijuana? And I have a follow-up. Go ahead.
This poor internet is going to give a lot of discipline to my answers. Get rid of the filibuster entirely, no qualifications or exceptions. And yes, I do support decriminalizing and legalizing marijuana. I just voted for that last month after I was able to amend the federal bill. So my vote is there on that as well.
And considering what happened yesterday with the Supreme Court looking like they're likely to strike down Roe versus Wade, again, how far are you willing to go to protect a woman's right to choose?
Well, here as well, we have already passed the key bill in the House of Representatives. It's called the Women's Health Protection Act. It would put Roe v. Wade into law by statute so that no court going forward could ever touch it. We also did some crucial coverage by Medicaid. And for the first time ever, we voted to allow Medicaid to provide abortion services to these women. Both of these votes have been blocked in the U.S. Senate. They haven't even gotten a vote. They've barely been debated. And if I can take my vote on those two bills over to the U.S. Senate, again, once we get rid of the filibuster, this could be the tie-breaking seat. And so I ask people to think about that as primary day approaches. If you're thinking about who is most likely to win the general election, I have a record of doing that. Despite holding these views that we all value and cherish, I've won in Republican districts, and that'll make me successful in this Senate race as well.
All right, next question goes to Solomon Jones.
All right, so Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, you've pushed hard for the legalization of marijuana in Pennsylvania, but on the medical marijuana side, high licensing fees, financing requirements, access to capital, a limited number of licenses have kept small Black companies out. And it's the same nationwide. How would you assure that Black people actually benefit financially from the legalization of marijuana?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have been a long proponent of it. In fact, I was the only one that supported the legalization even back in 2016 during my first race, primarily because marijuana and its prohibition has been particularly punitive and destructive in the Black community. We know that even though it's consumed at equal rates between Blacks and whites, African Americans are 300 times more likely to be charged and convicted for its use, which is outrageous, and we have to stop that grave injustice. Second of all, it also means legalizing it and making it accessible for people. I agree with you. The way the medical program was set up with the high barrier, again, I wasn't involved in the actual crafting of that legislation, but I've also long championed home grow. My colleague Sharif Street, I absolutely applaud his efforts as well to make it home grow so that you are able to grow your own medicine at home. I can't think of anything more cost effective and efficient for medical patients growing your own strain for your own particular ailment in your own home. Legalizing it recreationally could create a whole opportunity for Black Pennsylvanians that were frozen out during the medical program, and that's another reason why I've long championed its legalization. The amount of jobs it could create, and also bringing in more entrepreneurs into a space, particularly because that is the community acutely harmed by the.
All right, we've got the 90-second rule in play. Next question goes to me, Representative Kenyatta. You have been pushing for clean energy for quite some time, but would an immediate shift or a focus on clean energy be good timing, considering that the economy is so fragile? Should we continue to frack until things cool down, or do we need to make that switch right now?
So if you care about climate, there's one climate candidate in this race. His name is Malcolm Kenyatta, and you can vote for him. Right now, we are seeing Black and brown folks suffer immeasurably because of environmental racism. I've introduced legislation with Representative Bullock and Chris Rabb around this. The governor actually stood with us and took the legislative proposals we had and did them as executive orders. So at least we could begin the process, even as we fight to try to get some of those things into statute. We are seeing folks die from cancer, from suffer with bronchitis and asthma. We cannot continue to ignore this. And as we see more extreme weather events, flooding and tornadoes and hurricanes, you know what? If houses come down in Black and brown communities like they did in the 9th Ward in Louisiana, we're not going to be in a position where our communities are going to be rebuilt with the same urgency. And we know this. And so I've said that we should not allow new permits for natural gas and fracking. And frankly, these companies have 9,000 plus permits where they could do new drilling right now. They're not doing it because they're greedy. They could lower the cost of gas prices. They're not doing it because they're greedy. They've made more money than they've ever made, and they're still asking us for more. In this race, if we want to win, we need somebody from our city who you can trust is going to fight for Black and brown folks every day. And that will start with electing Pennsylvania's first Black senator and only the 12th.
All right, 90-second rule there. Representative Joanne, go ahead.
So, Representative Kenyatta, do you support reforming the Supreme Court in light of the court's dramatic move to the right and the behavior of Justice Thomas's wife, Jenny Thomas, who participated in the January 6th riot at the Capitol?
I mean, can you believe that? It's ridiculous. Jenny Thomas was one of the planners and conveners of the January 6th insurrection, and her husband is sitting on the Supreme Court and was the only person to vote against releasing documents to the January 6th committee because he knew his wife's texts were all up in there. This is a big point of difference between myself and the congressman and the lieutenant governor. I'm the only person calling for expanding the Supreme Court. And they're going to say it's not reasonable, it can't happen, we need to be down the middle, whatever. But these are the same folks who were not for the filibuster until public opinion moved to get rid of the filibuster. And I'm telling you that there are going to be folks who are going to start to move to my position, which is that we need to expand the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell packed the court by refusing to let President Obama make a nomination and actually have that nomination heard before the Senate. And then he threw that same rule that he made up to make sure President Obama couldn't nominate somebody to ram through Amy Coney Barrett after Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed. And so these people have no compunction. They're going to get rid of the filibuster if they get in charge of the Senate. You mark my words. They will try to expand the court if Joe Biden has a chance to nominate somebody else or try to stop him from even getting another nomination through like they did with President Obama. If they are willing to overturn Roe, which has been upheld again and again and again for 50 years, then they will have no compunction about getting rid of Brown versus the Board of Education or other things that should be considered settled law.
All right, Simon Jones, go ahead, next question.
All right, so Congressman Lamb, you often tout yourself as the only person in the field who has beaten Trump-backed candidates. But our reality in Philadelphia goes far beyond Trump. What would you do in the Senate in order to deal with the issues that we deal with here in Philadelphia, such as violence and gentrification in our communities?
Sure, thank you. Look, I don't know if you can hear me yet. I'm getting this internet stable sign. Yes. So that's the first thing I have to fix is some internet issues here in Philadelphia. But what I would do that goes far beyond Trump, I am about results. To me, leadership is about results. And I have spent a lot of time in this city in the last year meeting with church pastors, city council people, community leaders, elected officials of all types. Many of them like Sharif and John Street and the Black clergy of Philadelphia. Councilman Jones have come out in support of my campaign specifically because we've talked about how to bring billions of dollars here to get all the asbestos out of the schools, how to do a real anti-gun violence program that intervenes in the lives of young people, precinct by precinct, that stops the gun trafficking from rural Pennsylvania into the city of Philadelphia. Those are all dependent on federal programs. Will never come to pass if we don't win this Senate seat and get a majority in the U.S. Senate for the Democratic Party. If we do that, I will promise you that I will fight for every single dollar and every single program for Philadelphia the same way that I have fought for the people in my congressional district for the last 4 years. And we have brought hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars back to the people of our district. The child tax credit alone, which overwhelmingly benefits African-American children, benefited 113,000 families in my congressional district. And I have voted multiple to bring it back. It's the single best thing we can do about child. But we can do these things if we get a majority and make sure that then Pennsylvania gets its fair share.
All right, I'm gonna tell the producer to take 90 seconds for myself, because I'm just gonna do a real quick round robin, a last round robin with the candidates on some key questions, and then we're just gonna give closing statements, 90-second closing statements from each candidate. So these are yes or no questions to Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, State Rep Malcolm Kenyatta, and Congressman Connor Lamb. I will start with Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. Yes or no? Would you vote in favor of reparations legislation, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman? Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, unmute yourself, please. Unmute. You have to unmute. There you go. Yes or no?
I'm sorry. I would want the case studied extensely. I support President Biden's call to have a commission to study it extensively, and
so we gotta go
learn more.
Yes or, you have to go yes or no. These are yes or no questions.
I'm absolutely open to the idea. Absolutely.
All right. So go ahead, Representative Kenyatta. Yes or no? Would you support reparations legislation?
That's right. I support the bill that's moving through right now. Yes.
All right. Congressman Lamb. Yes or no? Do we hear you, Congressman Lamb?
Yes to. I said. Same here, yes to study reparations.
Okay, we got yes. Okay, so real quick, yes or no, Lieutenant Governor, would you vote for the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act?
Yes.
All right, Representative Kenyatta?
Oh, yes.
And Congressman Lamb?
Yes.
And yes or no, would you vote in favor of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? Lieutenant Governor Fetterman?
Yes.
And Representative Kenyatta?
Yes. Yes.
Representative Lamb?
Yes.
All right. And lastly, yes or no, would you vote in favor of expanding the Supreme Court? Lieutenant Governor Fetterman?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Representative Kenyatta?
Yes.
And Congressman Lamb?
No.
All right. Thank you for that round robin session. Okay, so we're just going to go we're going to wrap this up with closing statements from the Democratic U.S. Senate candidates here, and we will start with Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you, and thanks to WURD for organizing this forum and for inviting me on. I just want to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to talk about my campaign and my candidacy and my case before you. I'm proud to say that I originally started out as a GED instructor, and I came to a community that was abandoned and marginalized, and I just wanted to help young people get their lives back on track. And because of those efforts and the programming, 1,000 young people ended up earning their GEDs. But I got into public service, public elected office, after 2 of my students died in gun violence. And that's why I ran. And my commitment extended to running for mayor and successfully confronting crime and gun violence and bringing new business into a community that had very few, and bringing playgrounds to a community that didn't have any, and developing a successful community policing model. As your Lieutenant Governor, I championed a revolution in second chances, and I'm very proud of the record that we have sent home nearly 30 Philadelphians, almost exclusively Black, from needlessly dying in our Pennsylvania prisons back to their families, whether they're innocent like Lee or Dennis Horton, or others that just simply deserve to go home as well too. I'm proud of the record that I've accrued during my time. I'm making the case. I'd be honored to have your vote, but also I want to acknowledge the historic nature of Malcolm's candidacy as well too. He is Philadelphia's own, and I have.
Okay, 90-second rule there. State Representative Kenyatta, go ahead. 90 seconds.
Thank you so much, and thank you, John, for your endorsement. No, I'm joking. But I will say this: if we are going to change the Senate, we have to change the senators. And I reject, and I hope everybody listening rejects this idea that the only candidates who can win are moderate white guy candidates in Pennsylvania. I reject that notion. We deserve somebody who understands in their bones what is going on in our communities. It's why I've gone everywhere and talked to everybody about making what I call America's basic bargain real for every family. One good job backed up by a union, the ability to start a small business. a good school for your kid, the ability to go to the doctor when you're sick and fill the prescription when you leave the appointment, and then the ability to retire with a level of dignity in a community that is safe, where you have clean air and clean water. Yes, I would be the first African American ever to represent Pennsylvania, only the 12th African American to ever be in the US Senate. We can make history, but also, and more importantly, we can make a difference for working families. But we deserve a working class senator from our region. So Philadelphia, there's only one Philly candidate on the ballot. There's only one Black candidate on the ballot. His name is Malcolm Kenyatta, button number 3. Please, I urge you to vote for me in this race, and let's make history and make a difference. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative and Congressman Lamb. 90 seconds.
Thank you, everyone, and I apologize for all the connectivity issues I've had here this morning. As I said, for me, leadership is about results, pure and simple. You know, in the Marine Corps, they have a concept known as attacking through the objective. It's kind of like running through the tape. And so the way that I look at these issues, you know, the first result that I can really promise you or try to promise you is running a campaign this summer and fall that is actually experienced at and competent at beating Republicans, because that's all I've done for the last 4 years. And Trump has supported every single one of them, and he's 0-3 against me. But going beyond that, I do not view our job as complete until, if we say we are for better funding for our schools, until the asbestos is removed from a Philadelphia school. My job is not complete until, if we say we are for gun violence, Philadelphia's gun violence numbers go down. Fewer illegal weapons are possessed in this city. I've talked a little bit about trying to help Black-owned businesses get access to federal contracts. Our job isn't done when a bill is passed or when a government official visits this city. It's when the business owners themselves tell me we have gotten more contracts and we are doing better and hiring more people today. That is how I view leadership in the position that we are running for in the United States Senate. I've tried to focus my comments today on things I've actually done and things I've actually voted for. I may not be a showman or as much of a rhetorician, but if you nominate me and I'm able to win this seat, I will be here, I will be accountable, and I will get things done. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Congressman. All right, thank you to all of our candidates joining us here on our special Word on Politics Senate debate broadcast. We've been talking with, interviewing, having a debate with the 3 top Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, and that is, you just heard, Congressman Connor Lamb represents the 17th Congressional District in Pennsylvania. Go to connorlamb.com for more there. You also heard before then Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, 181st Legislative District. Go to malcolmkenyatta.com for more there. And lastly, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, and he's been Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. For more on him, you can go to johnfetterman.com. Really appreciate everyone's time this morning here on WURD. Thank you for everyone listening in. Thank you to my colleagues, also Joanne Bell and Solomon Jones. Really appreciate this, everyone joining in virtually. And it was definitely a lot to talk about, a lot to grasp and digest. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I want to thank your staff as well for setting this up and facilitating this. You are now listening to WURD Radio 96.1.
Thank you all so much.
900 AM. Thank you. And also wordradio.com, Word TV and Word app. We are in Philadelphia, and we are going to go into a conversation. We're going to open up the phone lines first at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. So we'd like to get everyone's reaction to what you just heard on this live 1-hour Word on Politics U.S. Senate debate of Democratic primary candidates. The primary is coming up on May 17th. So a lot happened there in that hour. So it went quickly. So we still have Joanne Bell, Black Women's Leadership Council, on with us, and also Solomon Jones. We want to kind of break down and unpack what just happened. What did we just hear? So we'd like to hear from you too. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. So go have at it, Joanne. Solomon, what do you think?
I'm gonna let Solomon go first.
No, I thought it was interesting. You know, I wish we could have heard a little bit more from Congressman Lamb. Unfortunately, he had that bad connection. But I want to be clear, when he was asked about the reparations, he said yes to studying reparations, and because it was breaking up. you didn't hear that, but he said yes to studying reparations. And so, I
Yeah,
think
thank you for that clarification.
yeah, I think that ultimately, Malcolm Kenyatta certainly very well spoken. Brother knows exactly what it is that he wants to do. I think that Fetterman understands that he's in the lead, and so less is more when you're in the lead. I think Conor Lamb is a guy who, and he makes a good point. He's beaten Republicans, and at the end of the day, that's what needs to happen in order for us to get this seat. I think that based on listening to these three candidates, I'd be fine with any of them, to be honest with you, winning this race, and would vote for them over the Republican candidate. But I think that certainly this debate and having them answer these questions that are important to our community, was a good thing and was a needed thing for us, because we need to hear, as Black people in Philadelphia who often determine who wins these races, we needed to hear directly from them, and we did that today.
Yeah, what do you think, Joanne?
So I think our focus was rightly on how all of these issues affect the African American community. But I also think we have to, in the final analysis, is to be pragmatic. And pragmatic is that we have to look at what is happening in Washington, D.C., and what will happen in November if the Republicans recapture the Senate. And so in my pragmatic way, I was interested in hearing a lot more from Lamb and what he had to say as a person who had been in a position to beat Republicans. I was also very interested in hearing the moderation that came from Lieutenant Governor Featherman. But I also know and feel that there's going to be this effort to really attack him on some of the positions that he has, and whether or not, if he becomes the nominee, that there's strength enough to overcome that, and I'm concerned about that.
We do have phone lines open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. So you, as listeners, as viewers, can react to what you just saw in this exclusive Word on Politics Democratic primary U.S. Senate debate. Let's go to Mrs. Jackson out of Delaware County. Mrs. Jackson, good morning.
Good morning. I wanted to ask Mrs. Bell if the question was raised to Lieutenant Governor Fetterman why he did not attend I think it was a debate or whatever at Enon some months ago. What was his reason for not showing up?
We did not get a chance to ask that question, but I tried to codify the question with his relationship to the African American community in Braddock and what they said about him being the white savior. If I could only offer you my thoughts about that, and he can correct the record if he wants. I think that it appeared, he indicated that he was in session in Harrisburg, which would be legitimate. But also, I think that in the earlier days, one might think that he was avoiding the question about the young man in the shotgun. That's what I think.
Yeah. So, thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead, Solomon. What did you think of that, too?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, here's the thing from a political standpoint. And I've worked on campaigns, worked for a congressman, worked for a city councilman. The bottom line is this. If you are in the lead, right, in terms of money and in terms of polling, then it is not to your benefit to show up more. It's to your benefit to show up less. It's to your benefit not to allow them to take pot shots at you on the same stage. And so from a political standpoint, it's clear to me that, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, made a calculation that it would be better for him not to show up at every single opportunity than for him to show up. That's just the reality.
Here's my real talk assessment of all three of these candidates during what really was, for me, provided some insights. So one, I felt, and definitely would love for Joanne and Solomon, love for you to jump in on here, but just my sort of real quick commando assessment, if you will. One, I felt Fetterman he felt a little bit wobbly and unprepared. Connor Lamb, definitely bringing the data, right? And, also talking about, I think that was a very strong statement. I can beat Republicans, but, he's got to get coached on emotion. Like what's your vibe? Like give us a little vibe. And Kenyatta, what are you auditioning for? U.S. Senate seat or, an MSNBC hosting slot? I just, that's my real talk assessment of like these three candidates. And I'm not sure. I'm the same as I agree with you, Solomon. I do wish that internet connection was a little bit strong, but we got to hear a good bit from the congressman, even though despite those internet connection issues, Philadelphia, you got to work that out, those internet connection issues.
I had thought.
Go ahead, Joanne. Yeah.
But just chiming in on that, the internet connection. I had first thought that he may have been on the western end of the state. I was actually shocked to find he was in Philadelphia and having bad internet.
Yeah, right.
and in the hometown of Comcast.
Yeah, that didn't look good for. Yeah, exactly. So we want to put that on the record too. That's just something that that he was. It was a challenge that he was dealing with on his end, but it wasn't his fault. But go ahead, Simon.
But that's a challenge that his campaign has to deal with. You have to know that this is a serious event. That
right.
this is the audience that actually votes in Philadelphia. We have super voters who listen to this station, who are very engaged in politics. And so, I would venture to say it's up to your campaign to make sure that your internet connection works right. You're not in the lead. You're behind, right? And although you have some endorsements and you have some ward leaders that are backing you, you have to make sure that this community hears you. And so, I take that as a ding against his campaign that they did not make sure that his internet connection was right so that we could hear every single thing he had to say. What I did hear, I thought was good. I think you're right. There needs to be more of an emotional connection. But you got to make sure your internet is right, man. You got to take this serious.
You have to. And see, that's the thing. We forewarned them. We told the candidates, be here on time, which they were. Take black media seriously. We had a candidate last year who, I don't know if he did, right? And look what it kind of went another direction for that candidate in that Philly DA race. The same thing here. Like black media, black radio, it is not the campaign election cycle stepchild. And so like I do think that like certain campaigns did take black media seriously in this moment, and other campaigns clearly did not in some of that preparation. And so, it definitely showed. Let me go to the phone lines. Maurice out of North Philly is calling in with a reaction here on our special Word on Politics broadcast. Maurice, what's up?
Yeah, good morning. As I listen, I think it was Ms. Bell that asked a question about refugees and immigration. What I didn't hear was from that question was a two-point question. We have to straighten out the first Immigration Act before that Haiti can even get in. And we haven't done that yet. That's not even having been talked about on the table. This is the reason why Haiti can't get in, because of the first Immigration Act of America. And that's one point I just want to make. And the second point I want to make, I did like that Ms. Bell did bring up the business contracts, business opportunities, employment opportunities. But one of the things we didn't hear, I think we have to take another look at, is business diversity, and that's a conversation we haven't had yet. We don't want where we get caught up in quotas. We need a fair representation at the table to create opportunities for entrepreneurs and up and coming people that want to do investments or whatever they're trying to do. And that's the conversation we're not having. We're looking at it from a point of where we being employees, but the employees only take us to a certain level, and then we drop off. That doesn't allow us to rise out of poverty. So if we're going to do true equity building, then we have to have a conversation around business diversity. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Maurice. Go ahead, Simon or Joanne. You want to respond to that? Joanne, since Maurice was talking about some of your questions.
I was intentionally on the infrastructure bill that Pennsylvania recently, while Malcolm Kenyatta was in the State House, passed did an RFQ where 9 companies were chosen, and all of the 9 companies were white companies, and there were no blacks included in that. And they're going to be divvying up some $17 billion, $17.9 billion, with a 13% goal to include minority companies. But that has to be done by those 9 companies. So my point, what I was making is that while we're talking about what we will do when we go to Washington, you're sitting in the House and you can do something, even if it's just to raise your voice. What I have found by our elected representatives that sit either in the state house or sit in the city, these opportunities go by every day. And so I'm of the opinion that we constantly are arguing and talking about giving the person a fish each day, but not teaching them how to fish so that they can feed themselves. And we need our elected officials to be able to build equity in business so that the businesses can take, black businesses can take care of black people.
All right.
Yeah.
We got, oh, go ahead, Solomon.
No, I'm just thinking about the marijuana legalization issue, and that's why I posed a question to Lieutenant Governor Fetterman that I posed. How are you going to make sure that black people actually benefit financially from the legalization of marijuana? And you know, I wasn't really satisfied with the answer. I don't think he talked about the financial benefit. You know, I saw black people dancing in the street. We happy. You know, oh, they're going to legalize marijuana and they're going to take the money. We were making the money, right, from marijuana, whether it was under, you know, illegally or whatever. We made it a product. We marketed it. We brought it to market. We made the money. They legalized and said, okay, we'll take the money. Y'all can have the weed. You know, that's not good enough. And so as a senator, how do you put something in place, whether it's tax credits, whether it's incentives, whether you incentivize partnerships with other companies to make sure that black people actually have some ownership in this industry that you have been pushing? And I don't hear the answer to that. And so it connects to that question about us having our own businesses. Well, here's an industry you've been pushing to us, and we want to own in that industry like we did before you legalized it. And so for me, that is going to be an issue going forward if that is going to be something that we're going to push.
Let's go to the phone lines. Gary out of Chester, PA, calling in for a reality check. Gary?
Thank you for taking my call. I'm glad I heard this debate. Now, Muhammad Kenyatta, he got a Chester connected because his grandfather ran against Frank Rizzo years ago, but that's a story for another time. I one time liked the Fetterman until I heard him today. He's a little sloppy. He probably needs Kenyatta to teach him how to hold a debate. He's real sloppy, he is. Now, Conor Lamb, he got all the talking points. You know what I mean? And at first I was a Fetterman man, but I'm kind of leaning to the Lamb right now, Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, Gary, pulse check. Let's go real quick to Ron out of North Philly. We'll wrap this session up here with Joanne Bell and Solomon Jones. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes, I enjoyed everything I heard. I wish y'all had asked the question about affordable wages in this country. It will help the future generation, those that's coming out of college. When we look at our government, when we look at the government with the president giving money to other countries, it's nice to do that. But the affordable wage, that will help to eliminate some of the problems we're faced with. A utopian, no. We have to look at that. And the other thing, jobs in the country. They do have the Marshall Plan going on when you start going up in Pittsburgh and places like that. But the jobs and money, affordable wages, I think that will help us. Thank you all for everything that you brought to the attention. Voters, you heard what they were saying on WRD. Now it's going to be your chance to make the difference in the selection of the candidates. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you so much, Mr. Ron. So that wraps this session, this post-debate session, a special word on politics broadcast. I'm Charles Ellison. I've been joined by my colleagues, my esteemed colleagues. It's been a pleasure and an honor serving with you this morning here during our special word on politics broadcast is Joanne Bell of the Black Women's Leadership Council, which is on the source actually today, later on today at 1 o'clock.
Be back
Here
at
on
1.
WURD. You'll be back at 1. And Solomon Jones, thank you for that quick transition. Did a quick Batman, a quick clothing change.
Superman.
Yeah, Superman change. That's right. Yeah, did a quick Superman change. There you go. From Wake Up with Word, transition to our Word on Politics debate. Really appreciate you both being here this morning with us and doing a little bit of post-debate analysis. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you, Charles.
Great.
All right.
Y'all take care.
Take care.
Thank
See
you.
See you again. Be
See
safe
you.
out there. Okay. Also, I think we're going to take a quick break. We're keeping phone lines open into the next half hour, and we're going to take a break here on. We're going to transition from Word on Politics special debate broadcast to open phone lines, more open phone lines here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break, take a breather. We'll be right back.
The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. Exclusively on WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Progressive Black Talk Media.
Kids are curious. That's what being a kid is all about. But with that curiosity comes challenges and sometimes dangers. As a parent, you do your best to keep them safe, healthy, and happy through it all, so they can be, well, kids. Being a kid can be hard. So we do everything we can to help you be the best parent you can be with free or low-cost health coverage for all Pennsylvania kids. Learn more at chipcoverspakids.com.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
For too long, our community has been under political attack. Democratic candidates Teresa Brunson and Carla Kane are committed to upholding the Democratic agenda while fighting for your voting rights, both in person and by mail. It's imperative that Democrats in Chestnut Hill, West Oak Lane, Mount Airy, and Germantown vote for Carla Kane and Teresa Brunson for state committee. That's Carla Kane and Teresa Brunson for state committee, because someone must stop the attack.
Paid by Kane and Brunston.
When is the moment you turn into a parent? For some, it's meeting eyes the very first time.
Hi, baby.
For others, it's a late night conversation. Or a very early wake-up call. While every moment is different, they all begin at Einstein. With level 3 neonatal intensive care units, all private post-delivery rooms, and a caring medical team, Einstein is turning people into parents. Einstein.edu/pregnancy-care.
WURD Radio Digital Tip of the Month with Stephanie Humphrey. Brought to you by Comcast.
It's always useful to have some tips on how to make your smartphone battery last longer, and here are a couple you might not have thought of. First, closing the apps on your phone probably won't save battery life. That may have been the case with earlier technology, but today's phones are optimized for apps, and opening them from scratch actually takes more battery power than just keeping them open. If you like streaming things like music, podcasts, or movies, try downloading the content to your phone to listen offline if that option is available. Streaming from the internet uses up way more battery life than listening to something that's stored in your phone's memory. So think about using these two tips to make sure your smartphone battery lasts all day. Stay tuned to WURD for more tips and stay connected with us at WURDradio.com.
Want the latest in WURD swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. WURD TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at ForWord. WURD TV. Black. Talk media. With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check. It's Reality Check Wednesday here on WURD. So we're just going to lunge into a half hour of more open phone lines. Want to get reaction from you, the audience. Many people listened in and watched the WURD on Politics special broadcast debate of the Democratic primary U.S. Senate candidates, the Democrats who are running for that open Senate seat here in Pennsylvania. It is one of the most hotly anticipated, one of the most highly watched Senate races in the country. In fact, you can make the argument based on all the conversation I'm seeing and the calls that I'm getting. It is probably the most watched Senate race in the country. Everyone is watching Pennsylvania. Once again, we said this in 2020, right? And then we're saying it again in 2022. Pennsylvania is being watched nationally, so it's just it's up to everyone. It's up to you. I'm not going to say it's up to me because I know I'm going to vote, right? So, like, I tell everybody to vote. And that voting conversation is non-negotiable right now, just like it was non-negotiable in 2020. It's always non-negotiable. And so this is a very perilous time that we're in, and people are going to have to turn out in record numbers at maximum level in this 2022 election, and particularly in races like this 2022 U.S. Senate race in Pennsylvania. And you are going to have to vote, particularly if you are black in Pennsylvania. You are going to have to vote for the Democrat. It's to not do that, to tap yourself out of this very critical election. And I can make this statement as host of Reality Check. This does not represent the views of the station. I'm making this statement. And it's a very nonpartisan statement, too, because it is about survival. It is about preserving some very hard-fought won rights that we just got a little less than 60 years ago, fully. And there's always been a lot of work to do. The work never stops. You don't just like clean up the block and then don't go back to it and clean it. Of course, if you like clean up the block once, you don't go back to it for a year or so. What do you think you're going to find when you go back? You're going to find it's going to be trashy again. So you have to do constant maintenance. Politics is about constant maintenance. We understand that we have to perform maintenance on our cars, right? We have to perform maintenance on our house. We understand even that we have to upgrade and maintain our smartphones, our computers, our laptops, our tablet, right? You got to do like the updates. That's what politics is. It's a constant thing. It's a constant up. There's no, I vote in this big election once, like people ask me to, and then I get everything I wanted or I said I wanted overnight, and then I don't do anything else. I just like tap out and don't get involved in it until I get the next attractive candidate or who I feel is the next attractive candidate in 4 years. No, it's a constant process of maintenance, and you have to, and there's nonstop work and relentlessness that happens in that process. So people are going to have to turn out and vote in November. And that's because on May 17th, we are picking the Democratic and Republican nominees for big statewide races such as Senate and such as governor, such as lieutenant governor. There is also a battle for Harrisburg and the state Senate. So Democrats there, all they need to do is recapture 4 seats in the state Senate in Harrisburg. So we don't need to complain anymore about how Republicans are holding resources and money back from Philadelphia. Okay, if you're so tired and exhausted by that, then get out and vote, and also get out there and encourage other people to vote to retake that institution back so you don't have that problem to deal with as much anymore. Same thing as far as the state house. Democrats are going to have to compete, however, in order to make that happen. So this is a very consequential year that we're in. Yes, it is another important year, as is every year. And if you're out here, complaining that, because we never told you, if you're under the assumption, or if you're, falsely claiming that we told you that voting was the end all be all, that's not on us.